Hello everyone. In this video, I want to give an introductory talk about non-dual awareness and furthermore, how we can recognize it and what the principles of this recognition are. So I hope this video will be accessible for everyone and especially to people who maybe feel like they haven't had a clear recognition of non-dual awareness yet. So rather than talking about the implications of living from this non-dual awareness, I actually want to start with a more broad introduction about what that even means, what this awareness even is, and what the principles of recognition are. So at the end of the video, I will give a short guided meditation which can be useful for this kind of recognition. But before we get to that, it can be very helpful to clarify some conceptual understanding. If that is in place, the recognition will actually be much easier. And what's interesting about this is that even in this beginning sort of conceptual introductory talk, you are already involved in the pointing out. If you're following along with what I'm saying, then you're actually, in your own experience, already recognizing this non-dual awareness to some degree. So the pointing doesn't really start at the guided meditation part. If you're following along with the kind of metaphors and concepts I'm providing you with, there might already be some real recognition power in them. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. What is the kind of underlying premise of recognizing this non-dual awareness? Well, the basic premise is that there is a different way of experiencing. There is, in some sense, a different way of being. And we're all accustomed to a very particular kind of being, a very particular kind of experiencing and orienting towards our experience. And what do I mean by that? For a lot of us, the default mode of being is a kind of grasping attention. It is the mode of constantly identifying experience as being something in particular. So we have this general sense that when we are looking out at the world, we know exactly what we're looking at. We know that there are these concretely self-existing objects. And likewise, what comes with that is this sense that we know exactly what we are. We are the self which is in the body or is identical to the body. It consists of this meat body, and this is what we essentially are. So this is our usual way of orienting to our experience. So we are looking from a very fixated, limited, identifying perspective. And what comes with that, what comes with this kind of operating system, is a very grasping sort of attention. We are always latching onto these interpretations. It's not like they are just allowed to arise, come and go in a useful way, but we are constantly holding on to these ideas about what the world is and what we are. And through this kind of energetic contraction around these interpretations, we feel that they are very real in some sense, that they are actual reality. And so what I'm suggesting to you here is that there is a radically different way of orienting to your experience. It is actually possible to shift into a totally different way of experiencing. And how do we do that? Well, there are, of course, many different ways of doing that. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of meditations you can do in order to shift into a different kind of being, a different way of experiencing. But with this approach of non-dual awareness, we are really doing something that is sort of different from other approaches. And what I mean by that is that we are not trying to create a particular kind of state. We're not trying to train our mind. It's not about having a really refined attention. And it's not even really about having a lot of spiritual insight, even. It's really always and only about recognizing what is fundamentally true about your experience already. So rather than trying to create something, it is more so the case that it's becoming obvious what is always and already so. And this is a crucial difference, right? Even just from a kind of psychological perspective. If we are uncovering something that's already the case, that is very different from this idea that we are, in some sense, this limited being which has to go through stages of progression and will then have a kind of freedom. But no, what I'm saying here is that the freedom, the wholeness, the centerlessness, the interconnectedness, the vastness, and the wonder of experience is already fully present. It's already right here to be tasted, to be lived, to be experienced. And so this is always the view we are taking. It is an awakened kind of view. So it's a different starting assumption we're having here. And this is really quite crucial, right? So this is always important to remember. It's never about creating something, but only about recognizing something that's already true. What's really beautiful about using awareness as your method of awakening, so to say, is that you're using that which is already fully experienced. So whatever you are experiencing right now, it is a testament to awareness. There can only be experience if there is the awareness of it. And that's of course true almost by definition. How could you experience something if there wasn't awareness here? Obviously, that question doesn't make sense. Experience, our objective world of phenomena, is just the shape this awareness is taking. And so this makes this kind of inquiry beautifully accessible, because we are only investigating that which is always totally obvious in our experience. Awareness right now is totally obvious. Just allow yourself to recognize this for a second, to feel this absolute certainty of awareness. You might be confused about everything you are experiencing right now. This could just be a dream. This could just be a computer simulation. But you are absolutely aware of it, no matter what it is. Or to be more precise, this awareness is taking the shape of your experience right now, no matter what the ultimate cause of it might be. And looking at our experience in this way is quite the radical shift for a lot of people, because we are not relying on abstract thought and philosophy. We are primarily looking just at our own experience, whatever is given in our own experience. And awareness is always given. It's always here. We might be confused about what it is, but we are obviously always experiencing awareness. Are you feeling something? Well, you're experiencing the awareness of that feeling. Are you seeing something? You're experiencing the awareness of that seeing. So awareness is always here, always appearing as something. So what is the basic claim here? The basic idea is that what you essentially are is an empty, centerless, unlimited, unbounded awareness, which is taking the shape of all your experience. So it is in of itself without any objective qualities, but nevertheless it is appearing as everything that you are experiencing. So everything you are feeling, everything you are seeing and hearing and so on, all this is just the patterning, the display of this basic awareness. And the spiritual path I'm describing here really fundamentally rests on recognizing this awareness and its nature. And speaking about this awareness is of course quite difficult because, as I said, it is in of itself non-objective. It doesn't have any qualities to which we can grasp. It is in that sense different from the ordinary phenomena of our experience. Whenever I have a particular feeling, I can direct my attention to it. Whenever I'm seeing something, I can direct my attention to it. But with this empty awareness, it's of course not really like that. And this is why it's often described as space-like. All analogies have their downsides to it, right? So if I'm speaking about the space of awareness, you immediately will have a kind of thought of a kind of spacious, vast awareness. And in some sense, this is misleading because this awareness I'm speaking about is not really a space, but it is like space to some extent. And what do I mean by that? Well, space in of itself doesn't have any qualities in our experience. If you're looking at the space between my hands, what can you say about it, right? It is invisible. It doesn't have any objective qualities. But at the same time, it doesn't obstruct anything. See how this space between my hands, even though it is qualityless, is also taking the shape of my face right now. So the space is not just empty space, but it's also appearing as something, as my face in this instant. And so awareness, in a similar way to that, is also without any kind of objective qualities, but always appearing as something. So one analogy that is often given to explain this is that of the screen and the movie. The screen in of itself doesn't have any particular shape or color to it. It is qualityless in that sense. But nevertheless, it can take the shape and the color of any movie. It doesn't matter what kind of movie it is. It can just display it effortlessly, so to say. So there's always this essential screen there. And then there is the movie that is sort of the display of the screen, the coming and going, the activity of the screen. And we can think of awareness in a similar way, that it is always in some sense present and here, and therefore unchanging, but the way in which it's appearing is always different, as you can testify by looking at your own experience right now. Your experience is constantly changing, but this basic awareness, this knowing of your experience is always here. And again, there is the pitfall there of fixating on this analogy and thinking that, like the screen, awareness is this concrete thing here that is somehow graspable, that somehow exists as an object of your experience. But again, remember, it is invisible, without qualities. It's nothing you can grasp onto, but yet it is always here. Another way to think about this is to use the metaphor of the ocean and the waves. So in this analogy, the ocean is our true nature of awareness. And the waves are our perceptions. So whatever we are experiencing, that is the wave in the analogy. And so what this makes clear is that the waves are just a form that the ocean is taking. It doesn't matter what kind of wave it is, if it's a big one or a small one. It's always just the ocean flowing into these different forms. And likewise, if we are applying this to our experience, there's always this basic awareness here. The lights are always on, so to say. Knowing of experience is always here. But what particular kind of shape this knowing is taking is always different. Again, looking at your own experience, this awareness, consciousness, this knowing is always here, but always appearing as something different. From each moment to each moment, there is this total, radical change of the display of awareness. But the awareness, nevertheless, is constant to some extent. Describing it as constant is, of course, a sort of conceptualization. It is a concession to our experience of time. But it sort of describes this stability of awareness, that it is not something that comes and goes. There's another really crucial point when it comes to the recognition of this true nature of awareness. And it's very easy to overlook this point or to not appreciate it properly. And this point is that this awareness is self-illuminating or self-knowing, so to say. And this really goes hand in hand with what I said earlier. Remember how I described awareness as space-like and without objective qualities. And of course, when you hear that, you might think, well, if it's without objective qualities, how can I be aware of it then? How can I recognize it then? Of course, there's a sort of dilemma there. How can I possibly recognize something or direct my attention towards something if it's invisible and space-like? And so the crucial insight here, which makes all of this possible, is the recognition that awareness is self-knowing and self-illuminating. So let me give you an analogy to make this a bit more clear. Think of a fire. A fire illuminates the outside world around it. It dispels the darkness around it. But does the fire have to try extra hard to illuminate itself? No, of course not. The fire is illumination. It lights itself up by being itself. Its being inherently has the quality of light, of illumination. And we can apply this analogy to our true nature of awareness. Like the fire, awareness is always shining, displaying. It is always appearing as something, as this field of perceptions you're experiencing right now. And so what does this basic awareness have to do to recognize itself as awareness? Well, it doesn't have to do anything to do so. Just by being this awareness, you're also knowing this awareness. So being and knowing are inseparable when it comes to this awareness. It is therefore an effortless self-knowing. It doesn't rely on subject-object duality. So this is quite different to our usual form of knowing, and this is why this kind of approach can cause a lot of frustration to people. When we hear of this true nature of awareness, this non-dual awareness, we habitually try to find it with our attention, with this grasping mind. We try to find it as some kind of object. But of course, we can't find it in this way. All we can find with our attention are objective qualities. So what do we have to do if we want to recognize this basic awareness? Again, coming back to this analogy of the fire which illuminates itself. All we have to do, in some sense, is to relax this contraction of awareness, to open up and relax back into what's already so. Of course, this kind of relaxation is in some sense imaginary. It's not like awareness was ever really contracted, but it can very much feel that way. It can appear that way. And so the sort of relative instruction we have to use if we feel that we are stuck on this level is an instruction that allows this seeming contraction to relax, to open up. And so this grasping to our interpretation gets opened. And with that, the self-illuminating nature of awareness just becomes obvious, effortlessly, right? So the relaxation is really synonymous with the recognition. As soon as we open up, there is this intuitive sense of this presence, of this non-dual awareness. So this again is not the subject-object kind of knowing. It is an intuitive self-knowing. Another analogy here is that if you're standing on one leg and you're in balance, you don't need to think about it. You don't need to refer to your thoughts to know whether you're in balance. You just have the sense of your balance. And likewise, when you open up and relax into this awareness, which is already here, you know it just by being it. You don't have to direct your attention to it. And the challenge a lot of people will run into there is that we will always try to refer back to our thoughts to know whether we are recognizing awareness. We try to seek confirmation by our thinking. So there is the recognition, and then immediately a grasping to, oh, am I doing this right? Is this really it? Is this really this awareness that Sam is speaking about? And so often very quickly there is a kind of re-grasping to the interpretation. And with that, this recognition of awareness can seem to not be there. So the important thing is to really trust your experience, to relax and settle into this space-like, vast, centerless awareness, and just trust your experience with what you're getting. And this trusting your experience is really a crucial part. One of the most beautiful sayings which I found so useful is trust your experience, but keep refining the view. So we are trusting whatever we are getting, but we also acknowledge that most likely we will still have certain limiting beliefs and fixations and attachments which will seem to veil this reality of this awareness. So there's always continual refinement possible. But nevertheless, we can also always trust the way our experience already is. This is very important because doubt will always rise up. And for a lot of people, that is really the biggest obstacle. They will have thoughts of doubt and subsequent feelings of doubt, and they will really attach to them, latch onto them, and really believe them to some extent. And so always just open up, relax, and trust what you're recognizing about the nature of awareness. What's really helpful is that with this recognition of awareness, certain qualities will arise as well. A sense of wholeness, of completeness, a sense of interconnectedness, and a sense of spaciousness. Now, these kinds of experiences are not awareness in of itself, but they are very, very closely related to this awareness. They're sort of arising with this recognition or becoming obvious with this recognition. And of course, there is the possibility that we are grasping onto, for example, this sense of spaciousness or this sense of wholeness and interconnectedness. But we shouldn't really worry about that too much if that happens. Because these kinds of wholesome qualities are actually very useful. They allow this relaxing and this recognition to happen in a much more stable and useful way. So sometimes it's even possible to lean into these qualities. If there is this sense of wholeness, of relaxation, then we don't need to push that away, but we can really welcome that, cherish that, use that as a really powerful scaffolding for this opening up, for this relaxing. These qualities of spaciousness, wholeness, interconnectedness, they are, in a sense, the side effects of this opening up, of this recognition. And to some extent, they are letting us know that we are on the right track. They are the kind of perfume of this recognition of our true nature. And we can sense them and know that we are very much in this recognition, in this relaxing, in this opening up. And likewise, if we feel like there is the sort of neurotic grasping, attachment, and these qualities seem to be very veiled or not present, then we are in a state of, we could say, not recognizing awareness. Right? But again, what I want to emphasize here is that you, in some very fundamental sense, already are this awareness, right? So there's nothing you need to maintain or create, or nothing you need to hold on to. It's always just about relaxing, opening up, and then coming to this self-illuminating recognition of the presence of awareness, which is always already here. Again, this awareness is centerless, doesn't have some kind of identity, some kind of self sitting in the middle of it. It doesn't have any objective qualities. It doesn't have a location in space. But nevertheless, it is appearing as all of this, right? And you fundamentally are that. If you exist at all, you exist as this empty awareness appearing as all of this. And like I said in the beginning, if you were following along with what I was saying here, there might have already been a kind of shift in your experience. This opening up, relaxing, and this quality of peace, of spaciousness, of wholeness might already arise to some extent. So that is very useful. And we will use that now for the next part, which is the more guided meditation or direct inquiry. So for this part, you can just pick a nice spot to sit at and look out into the space of the room. So I would recommend that you don't keep watching the video at this point, but just take a nice, comfortable, relaxed position and look out into the room. Okay, and so now that you're here in this nice, relaxed, natural posture, No need to sit in any special way. Just take a couple of deep breaths in and out naturally. Just allowing the whole nervous system to calm down for a bit. And shifting from this focus on thought to your direct experience. And just feeling the presence of the breath for a bit. The rising and falling of your stomach. And breathing naturally now. Nothing special to do. Just feeling the presence of your breath. If you have the sense right now that you are fixated on something, that there is a big tightness somewhere, a grasping onto some part of your experience, just allow that grasping to relax for a bit. Open some space around this grasping and settle into your experience of being present here. And now we will start to open awareness up a bit. So we will include our experience, more and more of it. And we can do so in a very direct way by first opening up to sounds. So whatever we are hearing right now, just open up to it. Whether you are hearing subtle sounds or loud sounds in the background, just have the sense of effortlessly opening up to include this field of sound. And likewise, open up the visual field now. So instead of being focused on a point in front of you, allow your peripheral vision to open up so that there is a kind of panoramic looking, a total openness to what's being seen. And as soon as you're noticing that you are grasping onto something, attaching to something, again, just opening up to this experience of seeing and hearing. And notice how already with this kind of opening up of awareness, a sense of calm arises, of wholeness, spaciousness, just naturally here, without trying to create these states or feelings. Notice how they just arise as the result of opening up. And in this openness, now include this whole sense of the body. So everything you are feeling, allow this too to be included in this awake openness. Again, it's not about paying attention to your experience in particular. It's always just about opening up to this presence of your experience. And likewise, whatever you are thinking right now, whether it's words appearing, images, doubts, fears, hopes, allow this whole field of mental activity to arise as well in this awake, unbounded openness. And again, just feeling this relaxation, this peace, wholeness. And as you're being open in this way now, become interested in this space-like presence in which your experience is appearing right now. Notice how this quality of awakeness, awareness, of knowing is always here. Whether you are trying to be aware or whether you are completely dropping all effort to be aware, the presence of awareness, this open, space-like awakeness, is always here and is always already including all of your experience. So become interested in this space, this openness. Don't look for it as some kind of object or thing or subtle feeling, but just open up to it. Relax. Notice how this space of open awareness is always already here. It might be the case that there is this sense of an observer doing a kind of practice right now. And so allow the space of awareness to fall back into this apparent observer, to open up and include this sense of self. And notice how the concreteness of the center dissolves. It is just another appearance and form that this awareness, this openness is taking. So what is this awakeness? What is it that is awake when you're not trying to be awake? What is it that is already awakened? And as soon as you notice that the mind is attached to something, grasping onto something, again, just using the visual field or any other sense field to open up again, include your experience, relax with this opening, and then drop any effort to maintain this openness. Just resting absolutely naturally. And feeling the presence of your whole experience. But crucially, you are now aware as and from this awareness. Notice this shift. You are not some kind of subject of experience, which is directing its attention to awareness, but you are this awareness. You are this openness. You are aware as this openness. And by being this openness, you are knowing this openness. Again, notice how with that, this sense of peace, wholeness, and space is there. And always trusting your experience. Don't worry about whether you got it or not. Just intuitively sense this awake presence that is here, which is appearing as everything. Everything you are seeing, feeling, hearing. Feeling all of that as the presence of this awareness. And now dropping completely any kind of effort, any kind of attempt to meditate, to feel, and even dropping the attempt to relax. Okay, and you can look to the video again now, and maybe you already got a glimpse of this awareness now, at the very least a bit of a sense of it, and that's quite fine. If you feel like it was not that obvious in your experience, that there was a lot of grasping, a lot of doubt, that's totally fine. Again, it is really okay to take this in a sort of gradual approach and becoming more accustomed to relaxing into this awareness and recognizing it. And that really is a very useful basis for all further exploration. In the way I talked about this awareness now, I sort of really emphasized the openness, centerlessness, spaciousness of it. But crucially, it's also important to eventually include your entire field of experience not as some kind of content which you are aware of, but rather as expressions of this awareness, forms this awareness is taking. And so you have empty awareness, groundless awareness, appearing as these transcendent, wondrous perceptions. And so then we have a true non-duality there. But I'll leave that for another time. As always, if you want to get in touch with me, you can do so through my website. Let me know if anything about this remains unclear. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you right here next time.